It's the story of humankind, the epic adventure that led our ancient ancestors from the frozen wastelands of Siberia to the lush valleys of the Americas. It's a journey fraught with danger and uncertainty, but also one filled with wonder and discovery. Join us as we delve into the incredible tale of the first humans to migrate across Beringia. 20,000 years ago, the world was a very different place. The Bering Land Bridge, a vast expanse of tundra and grassland, connected the continents of Asia and North America, allowing for the migration of humans and animals alike. Our story begins with a small band of ancient humans, likely originating from what is now Siberia, who decided to leave their homeland in search of new lands. They were likely following the herds of mammoths, their traditional prey, which had been migrating across the Bering Land Bridge for generations. But this journey was not for the faint of heart. The Beringian steppe was a harsh and unforgiving landscape with freezing temperatures, scarce resources, and dangerous predators. Yet these ancient humans were a hardy and resourceful lot, led by experienced guides like Tusk, a grizzled old hunter with a keen sense of survival. They set off across the frozen plains with nothing but their wits, courage, and a few primitive tools made of bone and stone. For weeks, they traveled across the undulating tundra, following tracks in the snow and hunting small game to sustain themselves. The threat of predators loomed large in their minds, and as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the ice, they could hear the haunting howl of wolves echoing across the frozen plains. But it was the growl that sent shivers down their spines, the low rumble of a saber-toothed cat, a predator so fierce and deadly that it had earned a reputation as the king of the Ice Age. As night fell, the ancient humans huddled around a meager fire, its flickering light doing little to pierce the gloom. The temperature plummeted and the wind howled, making it one of the coldest nights of the year. Suddenly, a shape began to emerge from the darkness, moving with a predatory grace that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. It was a Smilodon, a saber-toothed cat, its eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger. With a low growl, the Smilodon advanced towards the humans, its massive paws silent on the snow. Fear surged through the ancient humans as they realized the danger they were in. The Smilodon was one of the most feared predators of the Ice Age, and its strength and ferocity were legendary. Its sharp claws and teeth were like daggers and swords, capable of ripping apart its prey with ease. But the humans were not without their own weapons. With spears and sharp stones in hand, they stood their ground, ready to defend themselves against the approaching beast. As the Smilodon closed in, the battle was joined. Spears flew, stones were hurled, and the ancient humans fought with the desperation of those who had nothing left to lose. But despite their bravery, the odds were stacked against them. The Smilodon was too strong and too relentless, and soon one of the humans was wounded. As the predator prepared for the kill, the wounded man looked up at the sky, his breath misting in the frigid air. He knew that for him and his people, this may be the end. But then something unexpected happened. A small child, no more than 5 years old, stepped forward. With a surprisingly strong voice, he began to sing a song of his homeland, a song of courage and resilience in the face of adversity. The song echoed across the frozen plains, carrying with it the hopes and dreams of an entire people. As the human sang, the Smilodon paused, its head cocked in curiosity. The predator had never heard this sound before, and it seemed almost alien to it. The humans took advantage of this distraction, regrouping and readying themselves for one final stand. Together, they faced the Smilodon, their courage bolstered by the song of the small child. And in that moment, they knew that they would not go down without a fight. And that's where we'll end part 1 of this mini-series. Next time, I'll continue the story and find out if our ancestors were successful in crossing Beringia and if they managed to outsmart the deadly creatures that roam the icy plains. So make sure to subscribe so you won't miss the next episode. And thanks for watching. I'm guessing you'd like to hear something scary for Halloween. So let me set the scene for you. It's 2 million years ago, and our ancestors are making their way across a barren, lifeless landscape. The sun beats down on the cracked earth, and the only source of water is a distant lake shrouded in mist. But our prehistoric hominids have a secret weapon, the stars. By night, they use the constellations to navigate, traveling under a sky filled with more stars than grains of sand on all the beaches of the world. As dawn breaks, they hurry to shelter in the scant shade they can find. The heat is stifling, and their bodies, covered in coarse body hair, offer little protection from the sun's relentless rays. But they must keep moving. There's no time to rest. They have to reach that lake before nightfall. And then they see it in the distance, a golden sea stretching as far as the eye can see. It ripples in the wind and looks like liquid gold under the sun's gaze. Hope surges through them. They quicken their pace, eager to quench their thirst and maybe, just maybe, find some food. But their elation is short-lived because from out of the shimmering heat haze, something flickers. At first, it's just a tawny furred shape, a whiskered face, a pair of luminous eyes. But as it draws closer, they can make out more details. The shape is lean, muscular, predatory, and there are several of them. They come from the direction of the setting sun, from the direction the hominids have just traveled. And now they're emerging into the open, a whole pride of them, gaunt skeletal lions with ribs showing through their dusty coats. Their eyes are wide and haunted, their movements slow and deliberate. The hominids freeze in their tracks. They know these are no ordinary lions. These are desert lions, creatures that prowl the endless plains, hunting with the precision of a well-oiled machine, killing with a swiftness that gives their prey no chance of escape. And the lions see them too. For a moment, there's a strange stillness, a kind of electric tension between the two groups. The lions, driven by desperation rather than the thrill of the hunt, have spotted a potential meal. A group of slow-moving, soft-bodied creatures, easy prey in this unforgiving terrain. But our hominids aren't defenseless. They have sharp sticks, sharp rocks, and most importantly, they have numbers. There are 5 of them, maybe even 6 if the youngest can walk. And they stand shoulder to shoulder, forming a rough circle to protect the weak. A lioness steps forward, her eyes never leaving the group of hominids. She takes a few tentative steps forward, then crouches low to the ground, her muscles coiling like springs ready to launch. She lets out a low growl, a sound that echoes the desolation of the desert around them. One of the hominids throws a stone, but it falls short, and the lioness simply swats it away with a casual paw. Another throws a spear, but it glances off her shoulder, barely drawing blood. Enraged, the lioness lunges, but another hominid is waiting with a club. He swings and connects, sending the lioness sprawling. For a moment, she seems stunned, but then she's up and gone, disappearing back into the shimmering heat. The hominids let out a yell, a mixture of triumph and terror, because they know this is only the beginning. More lions are coming. There are at least 4 of them, maybe even 5. They're pouring out of the shimmering heat like a bad dream made real. And they're not stopping. They're coming right for them. With a final surge, the lions are upon them, teeth bared, claws extended, eyes gleaming with the feral light of the hunt. The hominids stand their ground, their thin, wiry bodies tense with the effort of holding back the onslaught. And then, just as suddenly as it began, it's over. The lions, sated by their recent kill, lose interest in the hominids and disappear into the shimmering heat, leaving our ancestors to stare after them. Their bodies still tense, their hearts still pounding. They survived this night, but how many more nights will they survive? How long can they keep running? How long can they keep hiding? The answers, like the lions, are always just out of sight, always just beyond their grasp. They have no way of knowing that in a few million years, the roles will be reversed and they, the so-called weaker species, will become the apex predators ruling the very same savannas where their ancestors once trembled in fear. For now, though, they can only hope that the lions will stay away and that they themselves will not become someone else as prey. This is really scary stuff. Imagine being hunted by lions while you're trying to find food and water. It's a tough situation to be in. And it's not just the lions that they have to worry about. They also have to deal with rival groups of hominids who would just as soon kill them as look at them. In the unforgiving environment of the prehistoric world, only the strong survived. And if they weren't careful, they could end up as nothing more than a memory, a footnote in the endless saga of life on Earth. But they are strong, these early humans, stronger than they know, and they will endure. They will survive. They will go on to become the dominant species on this planet, and they will do things that no other species has ever done before. They will build great cities, invent new technologies, explore distant lands, but none of that is ahead of them just yet. Right now, they are just struggling to survive, one day at a time, one encounter at a time, trying to stay alive in a world that is often indifferent to their plight. Will they succeed? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe. We've got lots more adventures in store for you. In a stark, dramatic courtroom, the likes of which you've never seen before or since, the defendant sits alone on a velvet cushion. A trio of judges presides over proceedings from a raised dais. One judge, a skeletal figure swathed in black robes, bangs a gavel. Another, resplendent in gold, strokes a long white beard. The third is a grotesque jester, garishly painted and horned. Behind them, a quartet of musicians, looking like something between an 18th century string quartet and the village people, plays solemn music on lutes, violins, and a cello. Before them sits the defendant, a seemingly innocent babe in arms. But innocence is a tricky business when your name is Jack, and the object of your affection is the stolen crown jewels. Jack lies swaddled in a blanket, sucking his thumb and gazing at the ceiling as the trial commences. The first witness called to the stand is none other than Red Riding Hood. She tells her tale in a matter-of-fact way, but the judges keep interrupting her, shouting, "Speak plainly, child. What was it you saw?" She recants her story, saying she saw the defendant with a crown jewel in his hand. The jester bangs his gavel. "Silence," he cries. "Let the infant speak." But Jack remains silent, eyes still fixed on the ceiling. Next, the musicians testify. They were hired by the queen to play for the royal ball. Then came the hooded figure and snatched the crown jewels away. The defendant didn't see this happen, though. He was fast asleep in his cradle. The jester bangs his gavel again. "The infant is guilty," he declares. He must have planned this in advance. But wait, what about the queen? Surely she has something to say. The judges call her forth, but she stands dumb, mute, mouth agape, unable to utter a sound. All she can do is gesture wildly, miming putting the jewels on her head and then losing them. As the trial drags on, the defendant grows increasingly listless. The room is stuffy and he desperately wants to get out for some fresh air. Just as he's about to be declared guilty, a commotion erupts in the gallery. A huntsman bursts through the doors, breathless and out of sorts. He too has a tale to tell, and it's all to do with a missing stream. He explains how he followed the trail of the stolen jewels into the forest, and there he came across a hidden glen where a tiny stream once flowed. But now, he swears, there isn't a drop of water anywhere. A hush falls over the court as the judges confer in hushed tones. What does this mean? Has Jack conjured a magical dryad and lured it away? Or perhaps he simply drank its waters and caused it to disappear. The court is in recess while they deliberate. And so we find ourselves outside the courthouse, watching Jack being carried away in a basket by 2 constables. They're taking him down to the cells, but they don't seem overly concerned with keeping him safe. One of them even gives a small child who's trying to get a closer look a little shove. The child drops his ice cream cone. Everyone stares at the dripping puddle on the ground, then slowly the crowd begins to disperse. Only the child remains, staring pensively at the melting ice cream. Jack's been found guilty, but what of the missing stream? Did he drink it? No, he didn't. In fact, he'd never even heard it sung. And here's the reason why. The trial is over. The verdict has been delivered. The mysterious case of the missing stream has been solved and justice has been done. All that remains is for us to hear the echo of its absence. Now, before you leave, if you want to hear more from me, then be sure to check out these other videos. Until next time, goodbye. Imagine a world just like our own, yet subtly different. It is the end of the last ice age. The world is slowly warming. But in this reality, it's warming much faster than it should. The rains fail year after year. Rivers dry up, and gigantic herds of animals that once roamed the grasslands have disappeared. Our story today begins here in a desolate world of withered grasslands and endless dust storms. Here, 20 figures move across the barren landscape, each one desperately trying to stay alive in a world that is determined to snuff them out like a candle in the wind. They move as one organism, as a single desperate heartbeat. They are the last remnants of a shattered world, the last survivors of the Ice Age. There's a profound silence in this frozen world. The only sounds are the crunch of their footsteps on the brittle stalks and the mournful cry of the wind through the empty grasslands. Where once there were lush forests and meandering rivers, now there is only a graveyard of dead trees and a parched earth that cracks under the relentless sun. The Ice Age has lasted for 12,000 years, shaping the world and its inhabitants into hardy survivors. But now the world is changing. The cold is receding, but the life that should accompany spring is missing. No birds sing in the leafless trees. No insects buzz in the withering grass. And the great herds of animals that sustained life and provided sustenance are nowhere to be seen. The earth is dying, and with it, the hope for a fruitful life. In this harsh reality, the tribe is led by a grizzled old man named Tor. He's seen the world change from one of plenty to one of despair. But he holds onto a fragment of the old world, a memory of lush vegetation and bountiful hunts that sustained his people for generations. Now he leads his dwindling tribe across the frozen wasteland, hoping to find something, anything that could sustain them. They hunt the few animals they can find, but the herds have moved away from this dying land, so they must settle for smaller prey. Tor remembers a time when men didn't have to think about where their next meal would come from. There was always enough to eat, enough to share. The winters were long, but they were filled with the promise of spring. Now there is no promise, only the harsh reality of a world gone mad. The tribe is not alone in this frozen hell. They share it with dangerous predators that prowl the wasteland, hunting anything that moves. The tribe must constantly be on guard, not just against the predators, but also against the elements. Tor has seen many die from cold exposure or simply from exhaustion. The journey is as much a battle against the elements as it is against predators. But Tor presses on, driven by an instinct to survive, a will to preserve the memory of his people. Each day is a gamble, a roll of the dice to see if the sun will rise again. Every night, the freezing temperature threatens to snuff out the last embers of life, but they endure, clinging to the hope of a better day. The tribe moves on, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. They are a picture of desperation, of sheer will to live. The old man walks slowly, his eyes fixed on the horizon, searching for a miracle that may never come. His people depend on him, and he will not let them down. He will lead them to the end, whatever that may be. Some days the sun shines, mocking them with its warmth. Other days, blizzards rage, threatening to bury them alive in the frozen wasteland. But through it all, they keep moving, driven by the need to survive, to honor the generations that have lived and died in this world. Their journey is a testament to the tenacity of life, a stubborn refusal to give in to the cold, dark embrace of death. They are the last, the sole survivors of a forgotten world, and their story is a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the indomitable spirit of humanity in the face of oblivion. Will Tor and his people find a new home? Will they be able to rebuild their lives in this frozen wasteland? Or will they become another footnote in the long history of extinction? Only time will tell. In the heart of a dried riverbed, the cracked earth is as hard as ironstone. Baked by an unrelenting sun, it offers no solace to the parched hand that claws at its surface. Fine dust hangs in the dead air, each particle a testament to a world that has forgotten the taste of water. Here, where the river should be, there is only the memory of water. Here, where life should flourish, there is only the threat of death. And death waits patiently in the shimmering haze, ever present, ever hungry. Our heroine, Nala, is a creature of this harsh landscape. Her body, lean and weathered, is a map of her struggles. Her eyes, pools of endless sadness, reflect the hopelessness of her world. She is a woman on the edge, balanced precariously between life and death. One step beyond is oblivion. She has walked this dried riverbed for days, her bare feet blistered, her lips cracked and bleeding, yet she does not falter. Behind her, the sun bakes the earth, pushing her forward into the shimmering haze. Before her, the horizon shimmers with the promise of water, or so she tells herself. For days, her only companions are the ghosts of the river and the vultures that circle overhead, their shadows like grim omens against the fading light. Each day, the sun beats down harder. Each day, the wind whispers tales of a forgotten world. And still she walks, driven by a primal need to survive, to find water in the sea of sand. She is a lone sailboat in an ocean of thirst, tossed and turned by the relentless winds of fate. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the wasteland, Nala collapses on the baked clay, her body heavy with exhaustion. The stars, cold and distant, offer no comfort. The silence of the night is broken only by the mournful cry of a desert fox. But hope, like a stubborn ember, refuses to be extinguished. With the first light of dawn, Nala rises, her body aching, her spirit unbroken. She presses her ear to the barren ground, listening for the sound of life beneath the wasteland. Can she hear the song of the earth? Is there a melody of moisture hidden in the rustle of the wind? Or is she merely a creature of habit, doomed to repeat her futile search day after day? And then she feels it, a tremor, a vibration, a pulse, a whisper of life beneath the dust. Could it be? Is the earth responding to her touch? Does it share her pain, her thirst, her longing for water? Or is it merely a trick of her desperate mind, a mirage born of scorching sun and relentless wind? With renewed determination, Nala digs her fingernails into the cracked earth, her body trembling with effort. She scrapes away layer after layer of dust and clay, revealing the parched ground beneath. It is a hard-baked surface, cracked and lifeless, but beneath that, could there be moisture? Is there a hidden spring, a secret well of water, a lifeline in the sea of sand? With each stroke, Nala's hope grows. Her breathing becomes more rapid, her heart pounding in her chest. Is she on the brink of discovery or merely delving deeper into her own desperation? As she digs, the sun climbs higher in the sky, turning the world into a furnace. Her muscles burn, her skin sweats, her throat parches. Then, with one final desperate heave, Nala throws aside the last layer of earth, revealing the cavity beneath. It is empty, no water, no life, just hollow darkness. Disappointment washes over her, as heavy and suffocating as the thick, hot air. The sun beats down mercilessly, mocking her efforts. The wind whispers its cruel song, and the vultures circle, their shadows dancing in the dust. But Nala, though defeated, is not broken. She is a creature of the desert, forged in its fires, tempered by its winds. She will rise again tomorrow, as she has every day since the river ran dry, to search for water in a world that has forgotten its song. For in the heart of a woman, hope is a stubborn flame that refuses to be extinguished, even in the face of a dying world. Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom, there lived a beautiful and intelligent princess named Nala. Now, Nala wasn't your ordinary princess. Oh no, while other princesses were busy attending parties and sipping tea, Nala was out solving mysteries that baffled even the smartest detectives. That's right. Princess Nala was a modern-day princess who used her wit and charm to crack even the toughest cases. And today we're going to dive into one of her most thrilling adventures yet. The mystery began as Naliwa was taking her daily stroll through the bustling city when she noticed a group of emaciated lions scavenging for food near the palace walls. Concerned for their welfare, Nala decided to investigate. But little did she know that this seemingly ordinary act of kindness would plunge her into a dangerous game of cat and mouse. As she approached the lions, they let out a menacing roar, their hunger-driven growls echoing through the streets. Nala, though petrified, stood her ground. She knew that these majestic creatures weren't inherently evil, but were driven to desperation by circumstance. In that moment, she vowed to not only help them, but also uncover the mystery behind their starvation. With her trusty companion Tusk, a royal guard who had more faith in Princess Nala's detective skills than common sense, by her side, the princess set out to find answers. Their first lead was the royal zoo, where it was discovered that several lions had mysteriously vanished. Could these missing lions be the same ones Nala had encountered? The princess wondered, her mind already piecing together the clues. As Nala and Tusk continued their investigation, they found that the disappearance of the lions was no coincidence. Someone had deliberately removed them from the zoo with the intention of harming them. But why? And who was behind this sinister plot? Determined to find the culprits, Nala and Tusk embarked on a thrilling adventure that took them through the winding streets of the city, each turn revealing new challenges and unexpected twists. Along the way, Nala's sharp eye for detail and her ability to think outside the box helped her gather crucial evidence. She examined paw prints, spoke to witnesses, and even managed to sneak into the lion enclosure at the zoo, all without Tusk having any idea what she was up to. Her dedication to justice was evident as she refused to let the case go, even when faced with danger at every turn. But as Nala got closer to solving the mystery, she realized that the threat she faced was more serious than she had imagined. The person behind the lion thefts was none other than the royal advisor, a seemingly trustworthy member of the kingdom's elite. Motives: the advisor had carefully orchestrated the whole affair to eliminate the lions, hoping to gain favor with the king by appearing as a hero. But Nala's determination to expose the truth remained steadfast. Despite the danger, she continued to piece together the clues, knowing that justice and the lives of the innocent lions hung in the balance. In a dramatic showdown at the palace, Nala confronted the royal advisor, using her intelligence and the evidence she had gathered to expose his sinister plot. The advisor, caught red-handed, was finally unmasked as the mastermind behind the lion's disappearance. With the truth revealed, the king and the people of the kingdom rallied behind Princess Nala, praising her bravery and quick thinking. The stolen lions were returned to the zoo, their health slowly restored thanks to Nala's timely intervention. And so, once again, Princess Nala's name echoed through the kingdom, not just as a beautiful princess, but as a brilliant detective whose courage knew no bounds. From solving mysterious thefts to unmasking cunning villains, each case was a testament to her sharp intellect and unwavering determination to do what was right. So if you ever find yourself in a puzzling situation, remember the tale of Princess Nala, the modern princess who used her unique set of skills to not only solve mysteries, but also make her kingdom a better place. From the depths of hell itself comes the hungry god. He hungers for souls, for flesh, for the warmth that comes with living things. Our story begins deep within the oppressive yet beautiful wilderness where a tribe of people are journeying through. Their movements are slow and careful, wary of the dangers that may lay ahead. At their center is a small fire, around it a collection of weary travelers. Amongst them is a young woman cradling a small child. Her name is Kino. She rocks her child back and forth, whispering soothing words into his ear. All the other adults are paying close attention to the path ahead, but none seem to notice the unnatural stillness of the forest all around them. There's no tweeting of birds, no rustling of leaves, not even the sound of a gentle breeze. It's as if the very essence of the woods has been sucked dry, leaving behind an unsettling quiet. Then suddenly, Kino's whispers turn into urgent cries. Her son is feverish. His breathing becomes more and more shallow. His cries echo through the stillness of the woods, growing louder, more desperate with every passing moment. The other villagers exchange uneasy glances. Whatever their destination, they know they must stop and help the woman and her sick child. So they make camp and do what little they can to help. They don't know how long they've been walking, how long they've been running, hiding from something. But now they must tend to this new crisis. They need to get the fever out of the boy. They need to save his life. One man steps forward. His name is Takadana. He is strong, silent, watchful. For whatever horrors lurk in these woods, he is determined to protect the people here, especially the women and children. He lays his hand on the boy's forehead, then looks up at his mother. She nods, understanding his intentions. Together, they will perform the ritual, drive out the fever, save the boy's life, but they know it's only a temporary reprieve. They know there are things far worse than fever in these woods, things that prey on fear and despair, things that linger in the deepest shadows, waiting for their moment to strike. And so they dance, Takadana and Kino, their movements frantic, their voices rising in volume. As they chant, the boy's cries become more intense, more piercing, and as he cries out, something stirs in the dark beyond the firelight. Something drawn to the sound, something drawn to the fear. It moves through the trees like a wraith, its presence heralded by a growing darkness that seems to devour the very light around it. It hungers for the sound, for the scent of fear, for the taste of despair. It is the hungry god, and he is coming for them. They try to stop the song, to stop the ritual, but it's too late. The hungry god is upon them, his form a swirling vortex of darkness that seems to consume everything in his path. Fear paralyzes the villagers. They watch in horror as the hungry god reaches for the child, his touch bringing with him an icy chill that seeps into their bones. But before he can claim his prize, a desperate cry tears through the night. It's Takadana. With a strength born of sheer willpower and love for the child, he grabs the screaming baby and runs deeper into the woods, away from the fire, away from the hungry god, and the villagers who can't move, who can't speak, who can only watch in terror as the darkness closes in around them. In the distance, they hear the sound of heavy footsteps pounding the earth, growing ever closer, relentless, inexorable. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stops. Silence descends once more, heavy, suffocating. When they finally find their voices, it's only to whisper one name in fear and reverence, the hungry god. He hungers still, and they have only moments to escape his wrath. This has been a dark reimagining of Little Red Riding Hood. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Until next time, be safe in the woods. Once upon a time in a distant land, all the wizards were invited to a magical cooking contest. They gathered in the king's great hall, each determined to win the grand prize, a golden whisk that granted its owner one wish. The rules were simple. Each wizard had to prepare a dish using at least 3 enchanted ingredients and 1 spell. The more difficult the spell, the more points awarded. As the contest began, the hall filled with the aroma of exotic spices and bubbling potions. Some wizards whipped up delectable desserts, while others conjured savory main courses. There was even a three-headed dog that helped judge the competition, its three heads representing the categories of taste, presentation, and difficulty of the spells used. When it was his turn, one wizard named Balthazar decided to go all out. He pulled out a small, unassuming pumpkin, cut it open, and with a flick of his wrist, sent a flock of brightly colored birds flying off its skin. As the crowd gasped, he calmly added a pinch of pixie dust, a dash of unicorn horn, and a spoonful of dragon scale, all items more commonly found in a witch's pantry than in a typical kitchen. Then he uttered an ancient incantation, and the pumpkin before their eyes grew into a magnificent golden bird, complete with feathers that shimmered like spun gold. The bird let out a piercing screech, then transformed into a delicious roast chicken, glazed with honey and studded with cloves. It was an impressive feat of magic, but would it be enough to earn him the golden whisk? Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd as a majestic lioness entered the hall. Her name was Nala, and she had a big decision to make. According to tradition, the winner of the cooking contest would have the honor of feeding the lioness, and Nala had never been able to refuse a royal command. But this year, things were different. Nala was expecting a cub, and eating a wizard's questionable concoction could put her unborn child in danger. As the other lions crowded around, eager to see what Nala would choose, she narrowed her eyes at the feast laid out before her. First, there was a bubbling cauldron of what looked like frog legs and eyeballs swimming in a murky broth. Next, a pile of shriveled up meat and vegetables that smelled faintly of sulfur and old socks. And finally, the roast chicken, which looked and smelled absolutely divine. But Nala knew that whatever was inside that bird was the last thing she should be consuming right now. The head judge, a portly wizard with a long white beard, cleared his throat and announced the winner. To everyone's surprise, it was Balthazar, the young wizard whose chicken had charmed its way into the hearts and stomachs of the judges. Nala felt a pang of sympathy for him. She knew that when the other lions saw what he had made, they would probably demand a do-over. As they closed in on Balthazar, growling for their prize, Nala stepped in front of him. With a sad shake of her head, she informed them that she couldn't eat his chicken due to her pregnancy. Disappointed but respectful, the lions backed off and waited for her to make her choice. Nala dipped her head and took a bite of the withered meat, hoping that her soon-to-be-born cub would forgive her. But just as she swallowed, a look of horror dawned on her face. As the taste of old leather and mildew filled her mouth, she realized with a jolt that she wasn't eating no wizard's cooking at all. Instead, it was her own son. In a panic, she spit him out and stumbled back, her eyes wide with disbelief. Balthazar, who had watched the entire scene unfold with growing horror, rushed to his bird and tore it open. To his horror, the shriveled remains of a tiny lion stared back at him. With trembling paws, he looked up at Nala and whispered, "I didn't know." Tears streamed down Nala's face as she explained how her son had snuck into the pantry and eaten some of his ingredients. In a moment of desperation, she had turned him into a bird so he wouldn't get hurt. Balthazar, overcome with guilt and sadness, fell to his knees. He had unwittingly fed the lioness her own son, and now the poor cub was nothing but a pile of bones. As Nala collapsed beside him, letting out a heart-wrenching roar, the other wizards gathered around, their faces etched with sympathy. They might not have been able to change the outcome, but together they could ensure that Nala and Balthazar would never have to endure such a terrible fate again. Long ago, the gods of Greece made their home on top of Mount Olympus. But now the mighty titans have come down from their heavenly abode and set their sights on global domination. Only they aren't interested in ruling the physical world. They want to take over the digital one. Zeus, the supreme leader of the gods, has claimed Twitter as his own. And with a few well-placed tweets, he can make or break politicians, companies, and trending topics. All the while, his wife, the goddess Hera, keeps a watchful eye on the online world, making sure nobody crosses the deities. Meanwhile, Aphrodite, the goddess of beauty, has taken over Instagram. Every post is a carefully curated selection of selfies, workout pics, and bikini shots. And her followers hang on her every story, but the other gods haven't been so lucky. Poseidon, the god of the sea, tried to make a splash on TikTok, but his videos just didn't get the views he wanted. So he retreated back to Olympus, sulking in his mansion on the cloud. Hades, the god of the underworld, stayed away from social media altogether, content to rule his shadowy kingdom in peace. That is until one fateful day when a small tribe of humans stumbled into his domain. Now, you might be thinking what I was thinking. If Hades rules the underworld, doesn't that mean he's already dead? Well, not exactly. See, in this world, there are two types of people, the living and the almost dead. These are the people who spend all their time on social media. To the almost dead, the digital world is just as real as the physical one. And since most people are more interested in impressing Aphrodite than appeasing Hades, he's pretty bored. But when he heard about this new tribe of uncontacted humans, he decided to pay them a visit. He found them living in a small village in the middle of a desert. Their houses were made of mud and their clothes were made of rags, but they were happy and healthy. And most importantly, they weren't on social media. When Hades offered them a chance to join the almost dead and be part of his tribe, they refused. He threatened them, he cajoled them, he even tried bribing them with cool sunglasses, but nothing worked. These humans were determined to live their lives offline, and then Hades had an idea. He told them he would leave them alone if they did one thing, create the most viral post in history. It would have to be something so shocking, so funny, or so heartwarming that it would make the rounds on every platform. And if they could do that, Hades would let them live out the rest of their days in peace. Of course, they didn't know what a terrible choice they were about to make. After struggling for weeks to come up with the perfect post, the tribe's leader finally had a breakthrough. She would sacrifice herself for the greater good. She would give up her life to create the ultimate viral post, a video of her tribe's entire way of life. If the almost dead saw how beautiful and meaningful their culture was, they would surely want to preserve it. And so the leader gathered her people together and told them of her plan. At first, they were horrified, but they knew she was right. So they all chipped in and recorded the video. Then the leader posted it online and waited. At first, nothing happened. Then slowly, people began to like and share the video. And before long, it was the most viral post in history. Aphrodite saw the video and was moved by the tribe's devotion to their culture. She reached out to them and offered them a place in her tribe, an opportunity to become influencers and never have to worry about money again. But the leader declined her offer. She had made a promise to her people, and no matter what happened, she would keep it. Then the other gods started reaching out, each offering the tribe a chance to join their ranks. But the leader turned them all down, except for one. She agreed to meet Hades in the digital void, where he offered her a place by his side, an eternity of blissful nothingness. But even that, she couldn't bring herself to accept. And so the gods made their final play. They sent their worst monster, the one everyone feared, the algorithm. It was designed to snuff out any hope of virality, to erase any trace of the tribe from the internet. And yet somehow, despite everything, the tribe's video remained. The gods were impressed. They had never seen such devotion, such unwavering commitment to a dying cause. And so they let the leader live, but only her. When the algorithm finished its work and the tribe vanished into the digital void, the leader was left all alone in a desolate wasteland, the last vestige of a dying culture. But she didn't despair. She knew what she had done, the terrible price she had paid to preserve her people's legacy. And then, through the static, she heard his voice, the god of the underworld, offering her a place by his side, a chance to escape the pain and loneliness of her existence. But she turned him down. She would face whatever came next, even if it meant facing the gods themselves. With tears streaming down her dust-covered face, she stood her ground, waiting for the inevitable confrontation, knowing that the gods' judgment was upon her. They had given her a choice, the choice between saving her people and losing everything. And she had chosen her people. Now she just had to face the consequences. As soon as Romeo entered the trendy wine bar with its mismatched furniture and Edison bulb lighting, he knew he was in for an unusual evening. The host had promised an unforgettable Shakespeare speed dating event, and so far it was living up to its billing. In his finest Elizabethan doublet and hose, he stood out among the normal jeans and t-shirt crowd. That is, until a gaggle of similarly attired men and women entered, a motley crew that could only be described as Shakespeare's worst nightmare. There was Hamlet, Prince of Denmark, looking brooding in black. Lady Macbeth, all in red and smelling faintly of sulfur. And even Beatrice and Benedict from Much Ado About Nothing, who argued loudly about something called a text. Before anyone could take their seats, the host, dressed as a jester, rang a bell and announced, "First round, let the games begin." Confused but intrigued, the players took their seats. Romeo's heart skipped a beat when a lineup of heroines approached, each more beautiful than the last. He was instantly smitten with Juliet, but before he could utter a word, she was whisked away to meet her next potential suitor, leaving Romeo to stammer, "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks?" To which the host replied, "Time, Romeo, time. You've got exactly 3 minutes to make a connection or move on to the next." "Got it, go for it." And so Romeo found himself blurting out passionate declarations of love to every passing woman, only to be gently reminded by the host, "You can do that later. Now's the time for small talk. Ask them about their weekend plans or favorite childhood memory. Be cool." But Romeo was in too deep, declaring, "My bounty is as boundless as the sea." And the women, though flattered, were looking for something a little more concrete. "Yeah, me too," whispered Juliet, rushing off to meet the dashing young lord. Next up, it was Hamlet's turn, who sat slumped over his chair, muttering, "To be or not to be," as the host frantically waved a flag. Each conversation lasted no longer than 60 seconds, just enough time for Hamlet to ponder the meaning of existence while simultaneously ignoring his date as attempts to connect. Hamlet, you want to switch places with me?" "I think I'm getting a vibe," said Ophelia, escaping before he could launch into his next soliloquy. In the third round, Lady Macbeth took her seat, and any man foolish enough to sit next to her quickly learned why she was feared throughout the land. "Unsex me here," she demanded of the poor lad beside her, "and fill me from the crown to toe top full of direst cruelty." Taken aback, he stammered, "No, thank you," and fled as fast as he could. Not so quick, though, before Lady M declared, "I fear thou playedst most foully for this time." Meanwhile, at another table, Beatrice was holding court, her wit as sharp as ever. "I do love nothing in the world so well as you," she told Benedict, who blushed at the unexpected compliment. When the bell rang, signaling the end of the round, he was so flustered he couldn't even bring himself to protest as Beatrice moved on to her next suitor. But as the evening wore on, something unexpected began to happen. Romeo found himself drawn to the sharp-witted Beatrice, while Hamlet and Lady Macbeth surprisingly connected over their shared anxieties and neuroses. As the final bell rang, they all looked around the room, realizing that the quest for love, like the bard's Thales knows, no bounds of time or space, and maybe, just maybe, a little bit of love could tame even the wildest of beasts. This is the story of Tusk. Tusk and his tribe were running for their lives. Behind them, A pride of lions thundered across the savannah, their paws kicking up dust as they pursued their prey. Up ahead, the rocky cliffs of the gorge loomed like a jagged wall. It was their only hope, but it was almost vertical. And with those lions gaining on them, their chances of escaping seemed as rocky as the cliffs themselves. Meanwhile, somewhere else in the enchanted forest, a gaggle of fairy godmothers were having their monthly union meeting. They sipped their moon milk, which tasted just like chamomile tea, and discussed the latest developments in their magical community. One fairy godmother was particularly agitated. She paced back and forth, muttering under her breath about ungrateful children and impossible tasks. The other fairy godmothers sighed and tried to calm her down. There, Fiona. Let it go. It's all in a day's work, really, said one fairy godmother soothingly. Just then, a young fairy godmother with shimmering wings and an even brighter disposition piped up. Oh, I know what would raise our magic quota for the month. A daring rescue operation, perhaps? She suggested with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. The other fairies gasped and began chattering excitedly. Yes, that could work, said Fiona, her agitation forgotten. But who needs rescuing? Oh, I know. That pesky old Tusk. All the fairies burst into laughter at the thought of trying to improve Tuska's luck for a change. Back on the savannah, Tusk and his tribe were in desperate trouble. They had reached the base of the cliff, and the lions were almost upon them. Tusk let out a desperate grunt and began scrambling upwards. His sharp tusks dug into the loose dirt and rock, and his powerful legs propelled him higher and higher. One by one, the members of his tribe followed him, their grunts echoing his own as they strained every muscle to pull themselves up the cliff. The lions, sleek and agile, could have easily climbed the cliff, but they hesitated, unsure if the hard, loose rock would hold their weight. One of them let out a frustrated roar and took a few tentative steps onto the cliff face. Then, as if making up their minds, they sprang into action and began climbing after the fleeing elephants. With each passing moment, Tusk felt his strength ebbing away. If he didn't get some rest soon, he knew he might collapse from exhaustion. But the thought of collapsing right here, right now, in the lion's waiting jaws spurred him on. He had to keep moving. Above him, he saw the top of the cliff and freedom beckoning. With a final burst of energy, he surged upward. His tusks caught on something solid, and he pulled himself over the edge. Gasping for breath, he collapsed onto a ledge, the safety of the cliff's peak at last behind him. He looked back to see the rest of his tribe scrambling up the cliff, their trunks raised in victory as they breathed heavily. The lions, their claws scrabbling for purchase on the loose rock, were stranded below. One by one, they slowly began sliding down the cliff, defeated. Tusk had never felt such elation at seeing a sunrise. The cool morning light felt like a balm on his weary skin. He and his tribe had made it. They had escaped the lions and reached a place of safety. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, bathing the savannah in golden light, Tusk and his herd began the long trek back to their watering hole. They walked slowly, their bodies aching from their ordeal, but their spirits soaring. They had cheated death yet again. That day, the fairy godmothers gathered for their union meeting. As usual, they sipped their moon milk, which tasted just like chamomile tea, and discussed the latest developments in their magical community. One fairy godmother was particularly agitated. She paced back and forth, muttering under her breath about ungrateful children and impossible tasks. The other fairy godmother sighed and tried to calm her down. There, Fiona, let it go. It's all in a day's work, really, said one fairy godmother soothingly. Just then, a young fairy godmother with shimmering wings and an even brighter disposition piped up. Oh, I know what would raise our magic quota for the month. A daring rescue operation, perhaps? She suggested with a mischievous twinkle in her eye. The other fairies gasped and began chattering excitedly. "Yes, that could work," said Fiona, her agitation forgotten. "But who needs rescuing?" "Oh, I know. That pesky old Tusk." All the fairies burst into laughter at the thought of trying to improve Tusk's luck for a change. Welcome to the channel. Today we bring you another tale of the valiant knights of Round Table. Our story begins with Sir Lancelot and Sir Galahad working late in the office. The rest of the knights were sent home long ago by their boss, King Arthur, because there was a big meeting scheduled for the next day. But these two couldn't get their work done, so they asked if they could stay behind and finish it up. King Arthur said that was fine, but he warned them about the office policy. If you aren't out by 10 p.m., the electric gate will come down and you'll be locked in here overnight. That would be bad news because the office was full of dangerous office equipment like staplers and paper shredders. And even worse, there were rumors that a big cat sometimes prowled around at night looking for someone to eat. Lancelot and Galahad worked diligently and they finished their reports just as the clock struck 10. They ran for the gate, but it was too late and had already closed. They pounded on it, but it didn't open. They tried to climb over, but it was too high. They looked around for a way in. Sir Galahad noticed an air vent. If they could get in through there, they might be able to find a way to open the gate from the inside. Unfortunately, it was too small for a full-grown man to fit through. Galahad wasn't deterred. He took off his armor and with a mighty heave, hefted it onto his shoulders and squeezed into the air vent. It was a tight fit, but he made it through. Lancelot went next, and as he did, he heard a loud crash and the sound of heavy paws on the floor. Something big was coming toward him, and as he squeezed through the air vent, he saw what it was. A huge lion with sharp claws and teeth was advancing toward the opening. Lancelot backed away, but the lion kept coming forward. There was nowhere for him to go. Just as the lion was about to pounce, Galahad came to the rescue. He grabbed the lion's tail and pulled it back. The lion lashed out at him and sunk its claws into his arms, but Galahad held on. He kicked the lion in the face and then headbutted him until the beast lost consciousness. Then Galahad freed his arm and helped the lion to its feet. To his surprise, the lion didn't attack him. Instead, it walked away. Apparently, it wasn't aggressive by nature, but only when threatened. Lancelot and Galahad opened the gate and walked out into the bright sunlight. They looked around for any sign of life and saw a pride of lions staring at them from the trees. The largest lioness stepped forward and introduced herself as Nala. She explained that her pride lived in the nearby forest and often came into the office park at night to hunt for scraps. She was the one who attacked Lancelot, but she only did so because she felt threatened. She also noticed Galahad's wounded arm. She licked his face to clean it and help it heal. As the minutes passed, more lions came out of the forest. Soon there were so many that Galahad and Lancelot were surrounded. Nala stepped forward and asked them to surrender their weapons. Galahad refused. He drew his sword and shouted that he would fight to the death rather than submit. Nala burst out laughing. She put her paw on Galahad's chest and pushed him down. His sword flew out of his hand and landed several feet away. Nala picked it up and tossed it into the grass. Then she motioned with her head for Galahad to follow her. She led him to a clearing and sat down. She told him that she wanted to make a deal. If he promised not to harm her pride, she would let him go and give him his sword back. Galahad agreed, and once their deal was struck, Nala picked up Lancelot's discarded shield and gave it to him. Then she led him back to where his friend was waiting. Galahad handed him his sword, and they both thanked Nala for her help. She nodded and watched them leave. Once they were gone, the other lions approached Nala. They wanted to know why she let their prisoners go. Nala simply replied, "I made a deal with the big lug, but I don't think he'd have minded if I ate you." The other lions roared their agreement, and Nala joined in with them. They all roared until the sound echoed through the trees. That is the tale of the Knights of Round Table Office Rescue Mission. Do you like this story? Tell us in the comments below. Please subscribe and we'll see you next time. Welcome to the Dragon Bakery Chronicles, where we bring you the most spectacular tales of dragons, magic, and of course, delicious baked goods. Today I will tell you the story of how a tribe of dragons and a group of humans joined forces to create the most spectacular bakery in all the land. Our story begins with a tribe of dragons searching for a new home. They had heard rumors of an abandoned neighborhood deep in the dark forest and were hoping to make it their own. The forest was a dangerous place, but the dragons were desperate for a new home after their mountain was destroyed in a volcanic eruption. Now, this tribe wasn't like other tribes of dragons. They didn't hoard treasure or terrorize the countryside. No, these dragons were gentle giants with a passion for baking. Their leader, a brave female dragon named Tusk, had lost part of her tail in the volcanic eruption and was determined to find a new home before winter. Her tribe followed her into the dark and dangerous forests, hoping to find a place where they could live in peace. After many days of searching, they finally found it, an abandoned neighborhood nestled in a clearing. It was perfect. There were houses, shops, and even a school. But there was one problem. The forest was full of monsters, and the dragons knew that they would need help to defend themselves. As Tusk led her tribe into the forest, they came across a group of tribal people who were experts at surviving in the wilderness. The dragons were scared, thinking they were about to be attacked, but the tribal people were more scared than the dragons. They had never seen such large and majestic creatures before and thought they might be dangerous. Tusk, being the wise and compassionate leader that she was, calmed the villagers down and explained that they meant no harm. She told them about the destruction of their mountain and their search for a new home. The villagers were moved by the dragon's story and agreed to help them defend the neighborhood from monsters. In exchange, the dragons promised to use their magic to help the villagers in any way they could. An uneasy alliance was formed, and the dragons moved into the neighborhood. They set up their homes and began to explore their new surroundings. The dragons were amazed by the forest. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. There were trees taller than any building in their city, flowers that glowed in the darkness, and animals that seemed straight out of legend. The dragons spent their days flying around the forest, taking in the sights and sounds, while the villagers went to work building defenses against the monsters. As the days passed, the dragons and the villagers got to know each other better. They learned about each other's customs and traditions and began to form strong bonds of friendship. The villagers even invited the dragons to one of their festivals, where they were introduced to the delicious taste of monster meat. It was a hit with the dragons, especially with Tusk. She had been wounded in the battle with the trolls and was feeling a little down. But the kindness of the villagers and the delicious food lifted her spirits. She realized that she had made the right decision by bringing her tribe to the forest. From that day on, Tusk and her tribe of dragons worked closely with the villagers to defend the neighborhood from the monsters. They fought side by side, sharing their skills and strategies. The dragons used their fire and magic to weaken the monsters, while the villagers used their bows and arrows to finish them off. Together, they defeated every monster that came their way, and the neighborhood remained safe. As the seasons passed, the dragons and the villagers continued to work together. They built new homes, planted crops, and even opened a bakery together. The bakery became the heart of the neighborhood. Every morning, the smell of fresh bread and pastries would waft through the air, bringing people from all over the forest to buy their goods. The dragons were especially good at making pastries, and their flaky, buttery croissants were a favorite among the customers. In the end, the Dragon Bakery Chronicles is a story about the power of friendship and working together. It shows that even the most unlikely of allies can come together to create something truly special. And what could be more special than a delicious pastry shared with a friend? So the next time you smell fresh bread baking, remember the dragons and the villagers and the importance of friendship. Thank you for watching today's Dragon Bakery Chronicles. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. Until next time, happy baking. Hey there, welcome to Paleologic, the age of dinosaurs. Dinosaurs once ruled the Earth for over 175 million years. They lived during the Mesozoic era, which is divided into 3 periods: the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous. The Triassic began 230 million years ago, when the first dinosaurs appeared on Earth. This era lasted until 201 million years ago. Then came the Jurassic, which lasted from 201 million to 145 million years ago, followed by the Cretaceous, which lasted from 145 million to 66 million years ago. The Mesozoic ended with the extinction of the dinosaurs at the end of the Cretaceous period. So it's no wonder that this era is referred to as the Age of Reptiles, or more specifically, the Age of Dinosaurs. Let's explore what life was like in this era, and make sure to stick around to the end of the video to find out who else lived during the Age of Dinosaurs, because it might just surprise you. But first, let's do a quick recap of how the Earth got to be the way it was before dinosaurs arrived. Before the Triassic period, life on Earth had been pretty rough. There were mass extinctions, ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and more, but somehow life managed to endure. Towards the end of the Permian period, during the so-called Great Dying, 96% of marine species and 70% of terrestrial vertebrate species went extinct. However, a group of small proto-dinosaurs called archosaurs survived. In fact, some scientists even believe that archosaurs were partly responsible for the Great Dying, and therefore were one of the reasons for the extinction of so many species. Archosaurs were a very diverse group of animals. One branch led to the crocodilians, such as crocodiles and alligators. Another branch led to the relatives of the ancestors of birds. And yet another branch gave rise to the dinosaurs themselves. By the start of the Triassic period, the Earth had begun to recover. Continents were slowly drifting apart, volcanoes were erupting, and the climate was warming. It was at this time that the first true dinosaurs appeared. The word dinosaur means terrible lizard. It was coined by Sir Richard Owen in 1842. He used the Greek word teres, which means terrible, and the Latin word saurus, which means lizard. At first, he thought that all dinosaurs must have been huge, based on the few fossils that had been discovered up to that point. Today we know that this couldn't be further from the truth. While some dinosaurs grew to enormous sizes, others were quite small. The same was true of the other 2 groups of reptiles that lived during the Age of Dinosaurs. One of these groups was the Thecodonts. These were mostly large carnivores, such as the famous T-Rex. Thecodonts were more closely related to crocodiles than to dinosaurs, but they shared the same habitat. So they evolved to fill similar niches. Another group of reptiles that shared the Earth with dinosaurs were the plesiosaurs. Plesiosaurs were a diverse group of marine reptiles. Some were fully aquatic, while others spent time on land. One of the most famous plesiosaurs was the Elasmosaurus, which had a very long neck. These reptiles swam in the same waters as ichthyosaurs, which were more fish-like in appearance. Ichthyosaurs were so well adapted to life in the water that they even gave birth to live babies instead of laying eggs. But let's get back to the dinosaurs. During the Triassic, dinosaurs were very diverse. They were small bipeds, kind of like ostriches, and lived in herds. The largest of the Triassic dinosaurs were the sauropods, but they were still relatively small compared to the giants that would appear later. Sauropods were the ancestors of the biggest dinosaurs that ever lived. Over time, they would evolve into creatures like Argentinosaurus, which weighed over 100 tons. As the Jurassic period began, the Earth's continents were mostly separated. The Atlantic Ocean was wide, and the Pacific Ocean stretched from one side of the planet to the other. Dinosaurs continued to diversify throughout the Jurassic. This period was their golden age. The largest sauropods evolved, such as Diplodocus and Brachiosaurus. But it wasn't only the herbivores that grew larger. Some of the biggest carnivores also appeared during this time, such as Allosaurus and Ceratosaurus. The latter half of the Jurassic saw the emergence of new ecological roles. Some dinosaurs developed beaks and feathers, allowing them to exploit new food sources. Others developed hard shells, allowing them to live in open habitats away from the safety of forests. Still, others grew longer necks to reach food that no other herbivore could, such as the highest leaves in trees. The Jurassic ended with a mass extinction event. Scientists aren't exactly sure what caused this, but they think it may have been due to an asteroid impact, volcanic activity, or changes in sea level. Whatever the cause, the extinction cleared the way for the next evolutionary leap. During the Cretaceous, flowering plants appeared and rapidly diversified. This provided new food sources for animals and also led to a proliferation of insects. Insects that lived among the flowers became prey for the first birds. As for the dinosaurs, they too experienced a diversification of forms. New species of sauropods, ornithopods, and theropods appeared. The famous Ankylosaurus and Triceratops also evolved during this time. The end of the Cretaceous brought another mass extinction event. This time it was definitely due to an asteroid impact. A 6-mile-wide space rock crashed into the Yucatan Peninsula, causing widespread destruction and climatic disruption. It's believed that this event led to the extinction of about 75% of all species, including the dinosaurs. So now you know that dinosaurs weren't the first animals to live on Earth, and that they weren't the only large reptiles during the Mesozoic era. But if they weren't the first, then who was? How did they come to be? The answer, surprisingly, can be found in the depths of the ocean. About 540 million years ago, life exploded onto the scene during a period known as the Cambrian explosion. Suddenly, complex animals with shells, exoskeletons, and hard parts appeared in the fossil record. These were the first vertebrates. They were small fish-like creatures called jawless fish. Jawless fish were the first vertebrates to evolve. They were small, soft-bodied creatures that lived in the oceans. Over time, some of them developed jaws and paired fins. These were the first vertebrates to evolve that we would recognize today as fish. The first sharks also appeared during this time. Sharks and rays are actually more closely related to each other than they are to fish. But let's be honest, there's nothing particularly impressive about bony fish or sharks. They're not giants, they don't have cool armor or weapons, and they can't fly. Well, except for the giant squid, they're pretty cool. Okay, but otherwise, yeah, they're pretty boring. After the age of dinosaurs ended, mammals began to diversify. One of the earliest known mammals is Morganeucodon, which lived in the late Triassic period. Mammals were small creatures that lived in the shadows of dinosaurs. When the dinosaurs suddenly disappeared, mammals began to flourish. They quickly filled the vacant ecological roles, and many mammals grew to gigantic proportions. Saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, and monstrous whales roamed the earth. But this prosperity didn't last forever. About 25 million years ago, the Earth experienced another mass extinction. Once again, mammals were wiped out, along with many other animals and plants. The end of the Cenozoic era brought the world we live in today. Modern humans appeared on the scene about 300,000 years ago. We spread across the globe and began to modify our surroundings. 12,000 years ago, humans began to domesticate plants and animals. This marked the beginning of civilization. And with that ends our whirlwind tour of prehistoric Earth. What surprised you the most about the Age of Dinosaurs? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching. See you next time. The sun was beginning its slow journey toward the horizon, casting long shadows over the savannah. A small group of early humans, let's call them the Seekers, were making their way home after a day of gathering food. Among them was a young woman named Eki, whose keen eyes were constantly scanning the landscape, always curious about what lay beyond the familiar landmarks. One of the great things that set these Seekers apart from other groups was their ability to communicate with one another through a series of sounds and gestures. They had developed a rudimentary form of language, which allowed them to share information, tell stories, and plan for the future. This ability to communicate had led them to explore further and venture into areas they had never seen before. And it was this very curiosity that led them to the edge of their territory. Eki had noticed something unusual on the other side of the Grey Rock Hills, a jagged cliff face that was out of place among the rolling hills. The Seekers' territory was vast, and they knew every inch of it except this strange rock formation. With a mixture of excitement and apprehension, they decided to investigate. As they approached the Grey Rock Hills, the setting sun cast long, eerie shadows across the landscape. The sight of the jagged cliff up close was both imposing and intriguing. As the last rays of sunlight faded away, revealing the darkness that lay within the fissure of the cliff, the Seekers hesitated. This was uncharted territory, and the thought of what could be hiding in the dark recesses of the cave made them uneasy. But it was Eki who stepped forward, her curiosity overcoming her fear. She had always been fascinated by the unknown, and she couldn't resist the urge to explore. With a deep breath, she moved towards the opening of the cave. The rest of the Seekers, recognizing Eki's adventurous spirit, followed closely behind her, their eyes adjusting to the dim light that filtered through the narrow entrance. Inside, the air was cool and damp, a stark contrast to the warm evening outside. As their eyes adjusted to the dim light, they began to make out the rough walls of the cave, etched with strange formations that seemed to dance in the flickering shadows. The sound of dripping water echoed in the cavernous space, creating an eerie atmosphere that sent shivers down their spines. Despite the unsettling ambience, Eki pressed on, eager to see what lay deeper within the cave. The others, though apprehensive, understood the allure of the unknown and continued to follow her into the heart of the Grey Rock Hills. As they ventured deeper into the cave, Eki's eyes caught sight of something that made her stop in her tracks. In the dim light, she saw a glint of metal, half buried in the soft earth. As she brushed away the dirt, she realized it was a tool, a hand axe, but not just any hand axe. Its design was more refined, its edges sharper, its craftsmanship more precise than any they had made themselves. This was a tool of a much higher quality, one that spoke of a level of skill and technology that the Seekers could not yet fathom. A sense of awe and wonder filled Eki as she examined the hand axe. Its sleek design and impeccable craftsmanship were a testament to the ingenuity and skill of its maker. The tool was clearly not just a means of survival, but a symbol of a more advanced culture, a culture that possessed knowledge and abilities that the Seekers could only dream of. As she turned the axe over in her hands, tracing the smooth contours of its handle and the razor-sharp edge, she felt a surge of inspiration. It was as if the very tool itself was whispering tales of a world beyond their own, a world where imagination knew no bounds and possibilities were endless. In that moment, Eki knew she was witnessing something truly special, something that would change their understanding of the world forever. With a newfound sense of purpose, Eki carefully picked up the hand axe, its weight settling comfortably in her palm. As she turned it over, her gaze fell on a series of intricate markings etched into its surface. At first, they appeared to be random lines and symbols, but as she studied them closer, she began to see a pattern, a language of sorts. Each line, each curve and dot seemed to hold a deeper meaning, a message from a time long past. As she deciphered the markings on the hand axe, Eki realized that she was not just holding a tool, she was holding a key to a hidden world. A world of advanced knowledge and sophisticated culture. With each symbol she uncovered, a new piece of the puzzle fell into place, revealing a glimpse into the life and times of the people who had crafted this extraordinary artifact. The markings on the hand axe were not just a means of communication. They were a testament to the ingenuity and creativity of a long-lost civilization. They told stories of their daily lives, their beliefs, and their interactions with the world around them. As Eki continued to pore over the hand axe, she felt a deep sense of connection to the people who had come before her. She could almost hear their voices echoing through the ages, sharing their wisdom and insights with those who were willing to listen. The discovery of the hand axe marked a turning point in the seekers' understanding of the world. It was a reminder that they were not alone in this vast universe, that there were others who had walked this earth before them, leaving behind artifacts that continue to baffle and inspire. With a pounding heart, Eki turned to the others, her eyes shining with excitement. She wanted to share her discovery, to show them the evidence of a people who had lived here before them, who had created tools of such beauty and precision. But as she turned, she saw a look of dawning realization on their faces. Their expressions had changed from curiosity to fear, their eyes wide with a dawning realization. They had known this place, or at least some of them had. Their eyes, filled with a mixture of fear and recognition, told a story of memories long forgotten, of a past that had come back to haunt them. Their silence was deafening, each member of the group lost in their own thoughts, trying to piece together the fragments of their shared history. The realization that struck them was like a bolt from the blue, shattering the illusion of their own superiority and replacing it with a humbling truth. They were not alone. This wasn't just an ordinary cave. It was a place of power, a place of secrets, a place that held the key to their past and the answer to their future. As the weight of this realization settled upon them, a profound silence fell over the group. It was a silence filled with unspoken questions, with fears and uncertainties that had lingered in the shadows of their minds for years. The discovery of the hand axe had been a revelation, a glimpse into a world beyond their own. But now, standing on the threshold of the unknown, they were confronted with the full force of what it meant. They had stumbled upon the remnants of a lost civilization, a tribe that had thrived in these very lands, creating tools and customs that had been passed down through generations. But where were they now? Had they vanished without a trace, or were they still out there, hidden from plain sight? The very thought sent shivers down their spines. As the realization dawned on the seekers, a wave of emotions washed over them. Fear, wonder, and respect all battled for dominance in their hearts. They had found evidence of a tribe that had mastered skills and knowledge far beyond their own. And in that moment, they knew they were standing on sacred ground, about to step into a world that was both familiar and utterly alien. The implications of their discovery were staggering. It challenged everything they had ever believed about their place in the world. This wasn't just a random assortment of tools and artifacts. It was a window into a rich and complex society. A society that had lived, loved, laughed, and died in these very caves. It was a legacy that had survived the test of time, waiting patiently in the darkness for someone to rediscover it. But as they stood there contemplating the depths of their discovery, a sense of urgency began to grow within them. They needed to explore further, to uncover more about the tribe that had lived here before them. The cave echoed with their hushed whispers as they exchanged nervous glances. The realization that they were not alone, that there had been others who had lived and thrived in this very cave, filled them with a mix of apprehension and excitement. It was a discovery that challenged their perception of the world and their place in it. And as they ventured deeper into the cave, They knew that they were on the brink of something extraordinary. This was more than just an adventure. It was a journey into the heart of their own history, a quest to understand the echoes of the past that still resonated within them. They were about to rewrite their history, to connect the dots of their ancestry, and to uncover the secrets that had been buried for so long. The tension was palpable as the seekers moved deeper into the cave, each step echoing the uncertainty in their hearts. They were on the verge of uncovering a truth that had been hidden for centuries, a truth that threatened to shatter their reality and redefine their existence. Deep in the heart of a primeval forest, two distinct tribes have thrived for generations. One, the Wamish, a peaceful people who lived in harmony with nature, and the other, the enigmatic and fearsome Stone Men. These two societies existed in relative peace until one fateful day when the Wamish ventured into the forbidden depths of the Whisperwood, inadvertently setting the stage for an explosive confrontation that would challenge their beliefs and change their destinies forever. Our story begins with the Wamish, a small tribe of hunters and gatherers who made their home on the outskirts of the Whisperwood. They were a gentle and spiritual people whose lives revolved around the ancient rituals and customs passed down to them by their ancestors. For the Wamish, the forest was more than just a provider of sustenance. It was a living, breathing entity that they revered and respected. Their days were spent in the peaceful pursuits of foraging for berries, hunting small game, and crafting tools from the bounty provided by the earth. Their nights were filled with storytelling around crackling fires, sharing myths, legends, and the oral history that had shaped their culture. Life for the Wamish was idyllic, but this tranquility was shattered when a group of their young men ventured too deep into the Whisperwood and stumbled upon a sight that would change everything. Before them stood a group of warriors unlike any they had ever seen. These men, or perhaps more accurately described as creatures, were tall and muscular with skin like polished stone and faces etched with an array of strange markings. But what truly captivated the Wamish's attention were the weapons these warriors wielded. Sharp obsidian spears that glinted ominously in the dappled sunlight. The Wamish recognized the significance of obsidian immediately. It was a sacred resource in their culture, used not only for its practical uses, but also in their spiritual ceremonies. To them, obsidian was a gift from the gods, and its presence here in the depths of the forest meant only one thing. They had trespassed into a place of great power, a place that was supposedly the domain of the legendary Stone Men, a race of mythical beings spoken of only in hushed whispers around campfires. The encounter between the two tribes was far from hostile initially. The Wamish, taken aback by the sight of the Stone Men, froze in their tracks, unsure how to react. But the Stone Men, sensing no immediate threat, paid them little heed, continuing their march deeper into the forest. The Wamish, still in shock, slowly backed away, careful not to make a sound. As they retreated, they couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that something ancient and powerful was watching their every move. But soon the forest grew denser, the towering trees forming a thick canopy overhead that blotted out the sun. The atmosphere grew heavy with a primeval energy that seemed to pulse in sync with the pounding of their hearts. And then they heard it, a low, guttural sound that seemed to emanate from the very roots of the forest itself. It was a sound that spoke of ages past, of battles fought, and of a power that lay dormant, waiting to be awakened. As the sound grew louder, the ground began to tremble beneath their feet, and the warriors emerged from the thicket, blocking their path. Their faces, now illuminated by the firelight, were a mixture of stone and flesh, with eyes that glittered like chips of obsidian. Their bodies were adorned with tattoos that depicted scenes of battles long past, each line telling a tale of valor and bloodshed. One of the warriors stepped forward, his gaze unwavering. His face was a roadmap of past battles, his features a testament to a life of conflict. In his hand, he held a spear whose tip seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow, and in that moment the Womish knew that they were in the presence of someone of great importance, perhaps even royalty among these fierce warriors. He spoke in a language that was harsh and guttural, a language that sounded like stones grinding together, yet somehow they understood him. He was declaring their presence on sacred ground, reminding them that they had trespassed into a realm that was off limits to outsiders. A sense of dread washed over the Womish, and they began to apologize, explaining their peaceful intentions and their ignorance of the sacredness of the place. But the leader of the stone men remained unmoved. He saw no value in mercy, and his warriors echoed his sentiment with menacing growls. Tensions rose, and the Womish knew that they were in grave danger. Yet they refused to back down. They were outnumbered, yes, but they were also backed into a corner with no hope of escape. They were trapped in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no awakening. And then something unexpected happened. One of the Womish, a young woman named Tala, stepped forward. She was known for her quick wit and bravery, and in that moment of desperation, the tribe looked to her as their last hope. She approached the stone man leader, her hands raised in a gesture of peace, and in a voice that shook with determination, she began to speak. She told them of the legends that her people had about the stone men of the Tales that had been passed down through generations. Stories that spoke of a time when the forest was filled with mystical creatures and when the stone men were revered as powerful protectors of the natural order. She spoke of how her people had not trespassed out of malice, but out of simple curiosity and a desire to understand the mysteries of the Whisperwood. Her words hung in the air like a plea, and for a moment the forest was silent, save for the crackling of the fire and the distant call of an owl. Finally, the stone man leader spoke. His voice was like the grinding of stones, but there was a hint of curiosity in it, as if he were considering her words. He asked her questions about the stories she had told, probing for more details, and she answered each one patiently, never once breaking eye contact. It was a tense exchange, a battle of wills played out under the watchful eyes of the ancient trees. And then as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The stone man leader nodded his head slowly, and in that moment, the tension in the forest seemed to ease. He signaled to his warriors, and they lowered their spears slightly, their hostility fading away. The leader then turned back to Tala, and in a surprisingly gentle tone, he invited her and her people to stay with them for a time during which they would teach the Womish about the ways of the forest and the secrets of the Whisperwood. Tala and her people accepted the invitation, and so began an exchange that would change both tribes forever. The Womish learned about the ancient lore of the forest, the forgotten history of the stone men, and the mystical creatures that still roam the Whisperwood. In return, they shared their own stories and traditions, bridging the gap between two cultures that had once seemed so vastly different. Days turned into weeks, and the Womish found themselves embracing the ways of the stone men. They learned how to hunt with spears and shields, how to read the signs of the forest, and most importantly, how to respect the balance of nature that had been so rudely disrupted by their intrusion. But as the time for their departure drew near, the Womish realized that something was missing. Among the stone men, there was an unspoken rule that prohibited them from leaving the forest, a tradition born out of a deep respect for the Whisperwood and its inhabitants. While the Womish admired this commitment to nature, they also yearned for their own lands, for the familiar sights and sounds that had always been a part of their lives. This internal conflict came to a head during a final confrontation between the two tribes. The stone man leader, his face etched with the wisdom of ages past, stood before Tala and the rest of the Womish. His words were grave, echoing the sentiments of his entire tribe. They could not allow the Womish to leave, not without ensuring that they understood the consequences of their actions. The Womish, led by Tala, responded with equal determination. They argued that while they respected the Stone Men's traditions, they also had a right to return to their own territory. The debate raged, the emotions running high as both sides struggled to be heard. But amidst the rising tension, Tala noticed a change in the Stone Man leader. His eyes, usually filled with a stoic resolve, now held a flicker of sadness. In that moment of heightened emotions, she saw not a fierce warrior, but a fellow human being torn between duty and compassion. Taking a deep breath, Tala stepped forward. She spoke not as a representative of her tribe, but as a friend, someone who had come to understand and respect the leader and his people. She reminded him of the very stories that had brought their tribes together, stories of mythical creatures and ancient conflicts. She told him of a time when the Stone Men were not bound to the forest, when they were free to roam the land, and of how a great cataclysm had changed everything, forcing them to seek refuge in the Whisperwood. She spoke of how the forest had embraced them, how it had healed their wounds, and made them one with its ancient heart. Her words struck a chord, and the Stone Man leader nodded slowly. He had never heard these stories from this perspective, and they resonated with a truth that he could not deny. With newfound understanding, he signaled to his warriors, and they lowered their spears, their bodies relaxing slightly. He then turned back to Tala, his eyes filled with gratitude. He thanked her for helping him and his people remember who they were, acknowledging that perhaps it was time for them to honor their past and embrace a future beyond the confines of the Whisperwood. In that moment of unity, the two tribes realized that their paths, though different, were also intertwined. They had come together in the heart of the forest, and it was here that they had found common ground, understanding, and perhaps even a glimpse of their shared destiny. As the Womish prepared to leave, the Stone Man leader gifted them with obsidian spears, a symbol of their newfound bond and a reminder of the lessons they had learned. With heavy hearts, they bid farewell to their friends, promising to honor the spirit of the Whisperwood in their own way. And so the Womish returned to their homeland, forever changed by their experience in the Whisperwood. They carried with them not only the physical gifts of the Stone Men, but also the intangible treasures of knowledge and understanding. The encounter had been fraught with peril, but it had also been a catalyst for growth, reminding them of the strength that lay in diversity and the wisdom that bloomed at the crossroads of cultures. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of our Female Superheroes Book Club. I'm your host, and today we are going to be discussing some amazing books featuring badass women. So let's get right into it. Today, we're going to be reading and reacting to an excerpt from The Rise of Nala by McKinley Morgan. For those who don't know, this is the first novel in the Wings of Ebony series. And this story follows Nala, a young girl who, after suffering the loss of her family, embarks on a journey to avenge them. Along the way, she meets up with an unlikely group of allies who help her along her quest. This is a great middle-grade fantasy adventure that features a strong black protagonist who embraces her true self and fights against evil. This is a perfect read for those who want to dive into a thrilling adventure with an inspiring message. So without further ado, let's jump into our dramatic reading. Do you really think you can defeat me? You've already lost when you decided to defy the Stone Men. You think I am afraid of you? I have stared down a lion and a hyena, and the terror they inspired in me was not as great as the loathing I feel for you. Do you really think I would mourn the loss of my kin if I allowed you to kill me? Ha! Your plan will fail, Lionheart. Even if you take my life, the prophecy will come to pass. You cannot stop what is destined to be. Nalahala screamed as she launched herself at the ground, shaking the earth with her fury. I will bury my own kin if it means they won't rise as monsters. Foolish child, your anger clouds your judgment. Soon you will regret your defiance. I will crush you like a beetle. With his 4 arms, the warlord reached out to grab her. His fingers curled into claws and slashed through the air as he swiped at her face. Nala rolled aside and brought her knees up to gouge at his eyes. The warlord howled in pain and rage and slashed at her again. She tumbled away from him and scrambled backward until she hit the rock wall. Her back pressed against the rough stone, Nala drew strength from the mountains themselves. She crouched low, ready to spring away from the attack. He would not catch her unaware again. When he came at her again, she danced backward, her feet hitting the edge of the ledge. She had nowhere left to go, her paws scrabbling for purchase on the small patch of flat stone. The wind snatched her words away, but the warlord heard her all the same. "You are trapped now, little lioness. Nowhere left to run." She bared her teeth. The warlord took a step closer and she lashed out, catching his forearm with her claws. He roared in pain and jerked his arm away from her. "You dare defy me?" "Defy you," she spat, pressing her weight against his claws, digging her hind legs into the stone. "As much as I despise you, you'd best kill me before I drag you down with me." As the warlord hesitated, her body tensed, muscles coiled tight. The ledge couldn't hold both of them, she knew, but the prospect of dragging the leader of the stone men down with her filled her with grim satisfaction. "Foolish creature, you forget yourself. You're nothing. Without the mountain." With that, he lunged. Alright, so we just read an intense scene from the rise of Nala. Now, let's discuss it. So first off, we see Nala getting ready to fight the leader of the Stone Tribe, also known as the Warlord. And she's doing her best to scare him off. She is trying to convince him that she doesn't care about her own safety and that she is willing to die instead of letting him win. But then he attacks her and knocks her off balance, which makes things worse because now she's trapped and has nowhere else to go. This scene is significant because it shows just how far Nala is willing to go in order to protect her people. Even though she's outnumbered and outmatched, she still stands her ground and refuses to back down. She's determined to do whatever it takes to save her people from the Stone Tribe, and that includes sacrificing herself. It also shows how powerful and resilient Nala is. Even when she's knocked down, she's still able to get back up and keep fighting. She's not willing to give up, even when the odds are stacked against her. Overall, it's an exciting and intense scene that really showcases Nala's strength and determination. The next thing I want to talk about is how Nala talks about being lioness. So she says, "As much as I despise you, you'd best kill me before I drag you down with me." In this scene, Nala uses the metaphor of a lioness protecting her pride to describe her own actions. She knows that if it comes down to it, she'd be willing to sacrifice herself to protect her people. Just like a lioness would, she's brave, fierce, and protective, and she's not afraid to show it. Nala's bravery is evident throughout the story. Despite facing danger head-on, she never backs down from a challenge. Instead, she stands up for what she believes in and protects those who are weaker than her. She's a true hero, and this scene is a great example of her character. Next up is Tusk. So we haven't met him yet in the story, but we hear about him through other characters' conversations. And they refer to him as our champion and say that he hasn't returned from the Northern Wastelands yet. So we can assume that he is probably out fighting the Stone Tribe and trying to save Nalahala Chief April. And since they're calling him their champion, it's clear that he's a respected and admired member of their community. I'm really excited to meet him and see what role he plays in saving Nala's people. We also learn that Tusk is a very important character in the story. He's considered a hero and a symbol of hope for Nala's people. They believe that he will come back and save them from the Stone Tribe. This adds a lot of tension to the standoff between Nala and the Warlord. Nala is trying to hold on long enough for Tusk to return and help them. She knows that she can't beat the Warlord on her own, but she's desperate to protect her people and save them from destruction. This creates a real sense of urgency and excitement for the reader and makes you want to know what happens next. Overall, this is a really well-written and exciting scene. The author does a great job of building suspense and keeping you on the edge of your seat. The dialogue is sharp and witty, and the characters are complex and engaging. I can't wait to see how this story unfolds and what happens next for Nala and her people. And lastly, let's talk about some book recommendations. If you love reading about badass female superheroes, then I have a few recommendations for you. First up is A Deadly Education by Naomi Novik. This is the first book in the Skull Immense series, and it follows a teenage witch named Elle, who attends a school for magic where the curriculum is deadly, and the threat of death hangs over every student. Ai is a powerful and complex character who has to use all of her wit and cunning to survive. This book is a must-read for fans of dark academia and magical schools. Next up is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This dystopian novel follows Katniss Everdeen, who volunteers to take her younger sister's place in the Hunger Games, a televised event in which teenagers fight to the death. Katniss is a strong and resilient character who becomes a symbol of hope in a world that seems determined to snuff it out. This book is a great choice for readers who love action-packed adventures with a strong female lead. Next up is Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates. This graphic novel reboot of the Black Panther series is a powerful story about identity, responsibility, and what it means to be a hero. The writing is fantastic and the artwork is stunning. It's a must-read for anyone who loves superhero stories. And that's all for this week's episode. What did you guys think? Let us know in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. We would love to have you back for more book discussions. So we'll see you next time. Bye.